Who do you say that I am? When I think of myself, I know exactly what you see. Every flaw, every blemish, the scars of my hurts and my mistakes, the things I've done to myself, the things that have been said and done to me, that's who I am. You see a mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt. You see the scarce shadow of a woman's potential irreversibly wrapped in failure. But then I hear it. That still, small voice. Who told you that? Who told you that you are defined by your mistakes? Who told you that you are ugly and broken? Who told you that you are only measured by what you give others? Who told you that brokenness and frailty are what you carry? Haven't you heard? You are not what everyone says you are. You are who God says you are, and you are His. He says you are fearfully and wonderfully made. He says you are a perfect design, made for a purpose, made for a destiny, and you are never alone. He says He'll never leave you nor forsake you. He goes before you. He goes behind you. He says you are bold. He says you are brilliant. He says you are brave. He says greater is He that is in you. You are a masterpiece, hand-painted by the Master Himself. You are who God says you are.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Nugget to Live By. I'm so glad that you decided to join me this morning. Don't forget, the Nugget to Live By is our leadership principle that we give each and every week. And our job is to try to find ways during the week to implement this nugget into your life. Because again, we are called to be leaders. We are called to be called out from culture, to develop and to become leaders and not followers. So again, thank you this morning for joining me for the Nugget to Live By. Now, again, there are a couple of things that we do here to help you become better leaders, to help you to be better followers of Jesus Christ. And one of the things that we do is we have offered a couple of great things. One I'm going to talk about at the end, but this one I want to share with you now, and that is our Good Seed Ministries app. The Good Seed Ministries app is a way for you to stay in touch with us as we prepare for re-entry, but it's another way to go back to see the media that we present to help you, a way that you can share it with your friends as well. So here's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to download the Good Seed Ministries app, and here's how you do it. Now that's how you follow Good Seed Ministries, and to download the Good Seed Ministries app. Again, we'd love for you to be part of our online church and to be part of the good conferences, workshops, and seminars that we will be providing this year. So let's get started with our nugget for this week. And our nugget for this week is called Communicate the Game Plan. Communicating the game plan. You know, whether you're married, whether you're a leader in your home, whether you're an older sibling, maybe you're a manager on your job, or maybe a leader in some point in one of the roles of your life, one of the key things that I find that so many people do is that they assume that most people know the game plan. But as the leader, we have to understand that it is so important that we communicate the game plan. We cannot assume that people know what to do, but we have to help them understand, because when we communicate the game plan, what happens is things become a lot smoother. So let's talk about communicating the game plan today. And the first thing I want to do is let's talk about our scripture, which is found in Mark chapter 16, verse number 15. Mark chapter 16, verse number 15. Let me read it. And he said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." And he said to them, "Go into the world and preach the gospel to every creature." That is Mark chapter 16, verse number 15. Now, why is that so important? Let me tell you why. Every good coach that I've ever watched has worked from a game plan. If you play sports like I have, you know every coach has a game plan. And his game plan is not for each game, but a plan for development for the whole team for the whole season. What I've learned is that when the season began, the coach would always tell us where we're going, but then he would show us how it's going to happen over the year. But each game, he had a separate game plan, because here's what he would do. He would watch film, or he would sometimes even go to the game of our next opponent so that he could write down notes of how they played, what type of plays they had, each player that they had, and then he would come up with an individual game plan for that particular game. So every coach that I've ever watched from had a game plan, not just for the individual game, but a plan for the development of the whole team over the course of the current and upcoming seasons. Here's the thing. Once the game plan has been drawn up, he then communicates it to the team on almost all of the continual basis. What I found was the coach would always tell us what's our overall goal for the season, and he would do that before each and every game. So every game, we would be communicated the game plan for the season, which would help us for the individual plan. Now, that's so important, so important. Now, let me just look at one coach that I can remember growing up as a kid. Paul Bear Bryant, the late Alabama football coach, had 5 points that explain what he believed a coach should do. Coach Bear Bryant was a historic coach, and he had 5 points that I want to go through real quickly that he talked about that every coach should do. And you got to remember, not only are we leaders, we're coaching up people. Every leader has followers, and the goal of every leader is to coach up every follower to become a leader. Let's talk about these 5 things real quickly. Let's talk about them. Number 1, Bear Bryant said this. He says, tell players what you expect of them. Tell players what you expect of them. One of the biggest falls that we find in marriage and any area where someone is leading is that they fail to tell people what they expect of them. It's so important that we remember that when we are leading out, that we make sure that we paint the picture. Well, what I like to say is we paint the vision on the campus so that everyone can know what's expected of them. So the first thing is to tell players what's expected of them. The second thing is give players an opportunity to perform. One of the things we've got to do is that whenever you're watching sports, and a couple of my teams right now, we have injured players. But when you have an injured player, here's what happens. An injured player is always an opportunity for someone else to step up to perform. Well, here's the thing. If you never give people an opportunity to perform, what happens when they have to step on the stage in a big game? Here's usually what happens. If they're not prepared, the team automatically loses. So it's so important that we give players or the people on your team an opportunity to perform. Not just talk about it. As the kids used to say growing up, we give them a chance to be about it, not just talk about it. So the second thing is we've got to give players opportunities to perform. The third thing, let players know how they're getting along. It's always so important that you have a dashboard, a scoreboard to let them know how they are getting along. What does that mean in something like a marriage or relationship? That means we have to get a chance to speak, share with people the good things that you see, to let them know if there's some things that they are falling short on, that we let them know. Why? Because we want to make sure that when the big opportunity shows up, they are ready to perform. So again, let players know how they're getting along. The third one. The fourth one is to instruct and empower players when they need it. Notice, instruct and empower players when they need it. You know, one of the things that I know coaching youth baseball for years, I had an opportunity to shape and mold young men, which many of them this year from my last team are now graduating from college. But here's one of the big things that I learned. As a coach, here's what you had to learn. In practice, you had to make practice have situational situations that were game time situations. So you just didn't go out to hit ground balls or hit fly balls and give them an opportunity to catch and throw. But what you do in practice is what you call situational baseball, where we would put people on base and we would hit a ball to right field and we would ask the right fielder, when the ball is hit to you, it's one out. What do you do? Because one of the things you always want players to know is what happens if the ball is hit to you. So the key is not just to instruct people, but to empower players when they need it. Let me tell you what I mean. In baseball is a game of a ton of mistakes. That's right. We learn in baseball from mistakes. That's why we call baseball the thinking man's sport. But here's what we would do with young people. When a young person would make a mistake, it's not an opportunity as a coach for me to jump on his back and say, how did you miss that ball? How did you miss that play? It's an opportunity to instruct them. So what I would do is put my arm around them and say, hey, listen, that situation, we know what happened. What should have happened? What should you have done in that situation? And I would give them an opportunity to say, you know what, I should have thrown that ball to third. Well, guess what? That's how baseball is. It's a game of mistakes. But here's what we've got to do. We've got to learn from our mistakes. And so what do? You give them an opportunity to get right back out there again. Through instruction and empowerment, this is how we've got to do it. And you've got to do it when they need it. And the last one is to reward players according to their contribution. When people are doing well, reward them according to their contribution. So that means if you're a manager on a job, this is so important because it helps us with productivity. If someone is doing well, reward them for their contribution. And that means even in the home. If a kid is doing well, reward them for their contribution. If your relationship, if husbands and wives, you've talked about the game plan, and the game plan is going smooth, reward them for the contributions. It is so, so important that we let people know that their contribution is so important. What we tend to do is we love to bring up when people make mistakes. That's the time to call a meeting. But we never think about the fact, when is the time to reward people for the contributions that they make? So let's wrap this up today. Here's the key. The process must begin with communicating the game plan. You've got to start it all off with communicating the game plan. And that is the key, as I said, to productivity. But it must continue with the exchange of information. You can't just tell people the game plan, but you've got to continue to communicate the game plan. Sidney Harris said, information is giving out while communication is getting through. Let me say that again. Sidney Harris says that information is giving out while communication is getting through. When there is an interactive communication between the team leader and his people, it empowers them to succeed. When communication is flowing and information and communication is flowing through a team, here's what you're doing. You're empowering them to succeed. So here's our question and how we want to implement this leadership nugget in our lives this week. How well do you communicate the game plan? How well do you communicate the game plan? And in what areas can you improve? How well do you communicate the game plan? And how well or how many of those areas can you improve? Again, thank you so much for joining me this morning on The Nugget. And again, Good Seed Ministries is a U.S.-based ministry. Again, we do ministry in Chicago, Katy, Texas. We're going to have a real great announcement for you in a little bit here. And we do international ministry in the continent of Africa through the country of Uganda. You can support Good Seed Ministries with your tithes, offering, and giving. It's real easy to do, and here's how you can do that. Now that's how you can support Good Seed Ministries. Again, thank you guys so much for watching the Nugget to Live By. I hope that you will join me this week as we move forward. We have some great announcements coming forward to you. And again, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit the share button. When you hit the share button, we're helping our friends, family, co-workers, everyone we know understand who they are and whose they are, and the purposes of God becomes clearer in their lives. Also, the potential that God has given to each and every one of us begins to line up with the calling of ministry that he's given us all. Don't forget this. I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. Have a blessed week.